reports, and we'll start with the December 2016 police report and Chief Sutter.
Thank you, Mayor. I just had a couple comments to share with you. Everybody may know that the Uniform Crime Report statistics were out about a week ago for 2016, and Princeton saw December 2015 to December 2016, and Princeton saw a decrease in the uniform crime reporting of about 11%. Just a couple comments on that. I'm not a major fan of UCR for the picture of crime or disorder, the state of a community. I think there's some drawbacks with it. However, historically in policing, law enforcement has seen community-oriented policing and criminal apprehension and detection as mutually exclusive. And we've learned in recent history that they're not. In fact, they're interdependent. You have to be active in your community. You have to have those partnerships to prevent and detect crime, and we work with the community to do that. So what I'd like to submit is that I would like to think and do think that all of our interaction with the community and our presence in the community is maybe showing dividends. And while you can't maybe prove it empirically, philosophically it really seems to line up. So that's a culture that we've been working on in the department as well, is that you can do those things that the police weren't historically known to do and still prevent and uncover crime. So just a little tidbit there. And while we're on the subject of UCR, the national reporting database, or the manner of reporting, is changing over the next few years, and the FBI is moving away from the Uniform Crime Report. That's been the standard since 1930, and we're moving towards a National Incident-Based Reporting, NIBRS. Basically, it's a more comprehensive and more specific way of reporting crimes, standardization nationally, and we've been picked in New Jersey as a beta site, a test site, to be a leader in that type of reporting that eventually will be throughout the state and throughout the nation. So this is a process that's going to be taking place over the next 2 to 3 years. I think the target date is 2020 for it to go active. We've started the process, and I think as this occurs, we'll be getting more specific information and a better process than what I personally think UCR is. So just some kind of high altitude comments on the state of policing in Princeton, and I can take any questions that you may have on the report itself.
Ms. Howard?
So that's helpful background, Nick, and will it change the way you do any reporting to us, or?
I think we're going to have a lot more, yes, I think it will. We're going to have a lot more specifics nationally to compare ourselves to. Benchmarking is extremely difficult with UCR. As much as it's meant to benchmark, it doesn't work, and it's very hard to compare ourselves against other communities, and I think that's one of the benefits that we'll see coming out of the NIBRS model.
Congratulations on what was the good news, but I think we, along with what you're saying, we may not want to make too much of a big deal out of the drop in crime, because sometimes the numbers are small, and we've seen with small n's too, a little shift.
Very true.
Really dramatic, and you can read too much into either drop or an increase.
Very true, and exactly, and you hesitate to, we'll certainly try to capitalize on good news and express that we think it's from, we'd like to think it's from our partnerships and from our community interaction, and philosophically you hope that that's the case. But again, it's very, to your point, very difficult to really prove with the ends that we have.
Yeah, I mean, it's a core. Semesters of statistics are taught about how to deal with these small n issues, so it's hard. But two specific questions. One thing that did go up, it looks like on the report, is larceny in December. That seemed like a statistically significant increase. And is there anything that happened in December that we ought to be worried about? Or
No, I don't. I did see that, and I don't see it as anything, as a trend, if you will. I think, as you go through time, you see those things kind of level out.
So the final question is, at every meeting, somehow it comes up, what's going on in Washington tends to permeate what we're doing. We know it's subject of a lot of discussions in the community, and one thing we've been talking about, of course, is continuing our efforts to build relations with the immigrant community. And something that's been reported in the last week nationally is people who are afraid of this new climate have been, there have been examples, for example, of people, visits to hospitals and clinics being down, visits to attendance at churches being down because people are afraid to be out engaging in the community for fear of engaging with federal immigration officials. So, that climate, that's just being reported nationally. I mean, I'm just wondering again here, if you have thoughts on what more we can be doing locally. I know you've had some ideas. You've been talking to SNU. What more we can be doing, to continue the steady course of what we've been doing locally, even amidst all the confusion nationally about policy changes. What can we be doing?
Sure. So a couple thoughts there. We have a couple initiatives locally. We're very active locally, obviously, in understanding and dealing with these issues. And we're developing a Facebook page that will be in Spanish. And we think that that'll help with interaction. It'll be a place for people to go to get, information that they may not otherwise be able to get from the English Facebook page. So we're doing things like that. We're also trying to think out of the box. You may have heard me say this a lot here. When we have community meetings and other types of formal meetings, part of my frustration is we tend to hit the same people that are engaged. And we're missing those that are underrepresented or maybe fearful to come to an organized meeting of, even if it's in the community, it's still the government when we're there holding these meetings. So we're looking at ways to do things more informally on a grassroots level, officer to citizen, and to continue to form those relationships. And I did want to share another piece of information that I'd forgotten about earlier. I was at a monthly meeting of Mercer County Chiefs of Police. And at that meeting, our county prosecutor is there every month. And we did speak about these issues on a kind of a county wider level, because everybody's dealing with these issues in their community. And the prosecutor did reiterate that the Standing Attorney General's guideline that you hear me speak about so often, that very specifically outlines our role in immigration issues, which clearly defines that we're not allowed to inquire as to immigration status of victims or witnesses. Okay, it clearly says that. And it defines when we interact and how we interact with immigration authorities when there's a violation. So that was, for me, a lot of clarity. There's been a lot of talk is that Attorney General's guideline still good? Is it still the rule? And that was reiterated to us that it certainly is. So, and that's been, I believe, 2007 under General Milgram that was issued. So you're talking 10 years of precedent there that we're still following now. At least there's some clarity as far as that goes, because I know I've gotten a lot of questions about that personally.
Go ahead, Jenny. Yeah, I wanted to talk about the Your Speed Is signs. I mean, the Your Speed Is signs. The first thing is, in the Public Safety Committee meeting a while ago, when we were first getting these signs, I thought that we had come to an agreement that, and I wanted the other council members to know this, that because we had some people requesting that they wanted to buy a sign for their neighborhood, and it seemed clear, and I talked to Lisa about this. I'm sorry I forgot to talk to you about this, Trishka. But it seemed clear that, to me at least, that we would have to have equal access to the Your Speed Is signs, and so someone can't buy one and put it permanently up or have preference over anyone else. But I'm not sure that was communicated, because I know that there's been a couple of purchases. The Institute has bought 2 of them, and the Hun School bought 2, and I don't know if they were told this, that they can put them up, but they can't, I mean, we can't guarantee that they're going to be protective of their property. So I just wanted to get that out of there and talk about this and make sure the policy, because I don't, you know, it wouldn't be fair if people could just buy them and.
Quite frankly, I'll need to speak with our traffic bureau about that and see what information they can give me on. I don't have an answer for you. I hear what
Okay.
you're saying, and I
Okay.
certainly, yeah, I'll have a discussion tomorrow and find out what the issues are there, and I'll
Well, just to
report
make,
back.
I think we just need reassurance that that's the policy and that's clearly conveyed, because we did discuss it at one meeting, and then a couple months later, it was a different officer, and I think that, and so I just felt like it needs to be on the record, this policy somehow. And I just want to make sure everyone on the council agrees, and we can, it seems pretty clear to me, but I don't know if it did to the officers.
I'll speak to them, and I'll put it on the next agenda for the Public Safety Committee so that we can get the information back to you.
Okay.
Does that work?
Okay. And the other thing is about the data. I know that you're working on putting the data from those in our police reports, and that's really exciting. I think it's something that people will be interested in. Yeah, and so I'd like to be a leader in this area and publish the raw data from all of them just put them up on the internet in raw form so that geeky people who want to play with it could play with it.
That was part of the discussions that's a great point. Part of the discussions we were having internally about how to report it is there's a really robust amount of data there,
Yeah.
and it's even hard for us to interpret. I mean, that's one way to do it, is just to kind of just kind of throw it out there and let people interpret it the way
Yeah.
they do. It's
Well, I'd like to just do that separate from the report that we get here, so that, I guess you're working out, like, I think people here would want to know
okay.
what
Yeah.
what are the average speeds on the roads and things.
Mhm.
I'm guessing that you can figure out what.
Yeah, the data that I see, and again, it's really a lot. There's a lot of information
I
there.
bet it is,
So,
and that's why I think
again,
err on
we'll-
the side of putting it all there. And I know, like, one time during revaluation, some anonymous person downloaded the data and made it all into a form that we could understand and sent it to us anonymously. It was kind of weird, but but it was someone who had gone to a lot of trouble, and I think that kind of thing sometimes happens. That maybe someone might be interested in doing it, and if they're not, it's no big deal to just completely put it raw, so you don't have to do a lot of work.
I have no objection to it.
That would seem
personally.
like the question, as long as you're not having to, I think which Jenny would understand, if there's not data storage issues, and you just have to
Yeah.
figure out, like, sort of what form it's in and how you can put it up. And
Right.
then-
Well, so for instance, the Mercer County, the state tax division puts up all the data for tax records in a really not user-friendly form, but it's a CSV, a comma-separated file, and it's super easy to do. It's not that easy to get it and use it, but some people do, obviously.
One of the concerns that I had and what we were discussing internally was that there is a lot of data there. So how to get that to you and to the public was a
Yeah,
issue
well,
we
that's
were
a
trying to
different,
work through.
but I know,
So-
that seems hard, but I think people, like, maybe you could just take a few selected streets that you did report which streets the machines were on, and then the average speed on those streets. That could be the kind of the baseline.
Or we could present it even to a group like the Code for Princeton group and do it as a competition of how do you take all this data and display it in a way that's digestible. And even for that, you could probably take a snapshot of, I have no idea how big the file is, but like a week's worth of data,
Right.
and like how do you
Right.
put that together? So there's some pretty talented graphical people as part of that group.
I've been trying to get together with them. We've spoken about this, and that's kind of the questions that we're trying to work through is, way beyond me. So we'll certainly examine it.
Ms. Butler, did you have a question?
Yes, I did. Thank you. Going back to the question about the immigrants, do you have a plan for reaching out to other groups? I mean, I actually you said you were a little frustrated that typically when you hold these public meetings, it's the same people. I mean, if you wanted to discreetly reach out to other groups, do you want to hear about that? Like, I think I have some ideas
Sure.
about
Oh,
ways in which you can do it, but they would be much
Absolutely.
smaller groups.
Absolutely, and I am interested in hearing ideas, and I invite the ideas. I rely on several of our officers, too. We're brainstorming. The idea is not going to come from me, I can tell you. It's going to come from our partnerships and from our officers
Okay.
that have
I have
a
some ideas.
really good idea of where we should start and what we need to do. We're all in. We're all in, whatever we can do.
I see that our 14-year-olds were very active again this month. But in particular, I have one question. In here it says a 14-year-old was charged with making terroristic threats. And why isn't that a Homeland Security issue? And why do we use that against a 14-year-old who just wants to,
Terroristic threats is actually, and it's a good question. Terroristic threats is a statute. It's actually threatening language, meaning it usually comes from it's like a form of harassment. So when it says terroristic threats, it doesn't mean terrorism in the way we think about it. It's a New Jersey statute. Making terroristic threats usually comes from, in these cases, from complaints of between, somebody made a threat against another individual of harm,
they wanted to fight? Yeah.
or serious bodily harm.
Then I had a question about the police blotter in general.
Mm-hmm.
Do you put everything out on the weekly police blotters?
No, the police blotter is covered by Executive Order 69, which dictates the information that we're required to release to the media upon request. We don't do it upon request. We do it as a matter of business. So technically, by Executive Order 69, somebody makes a request for certain information, and that's the information we have to release. We took 46,000 calls for service last year.
Well, that's what I'm wondering, but we've
So-
had a sort of back-channel discussion about policing on Prospect Avenue, and,
Yeah.
you seemed a little annoyed that we should somehow know that you're policing over there, that there were 500,
No,
that they were in the
yeah.
blotter. And
No, I wasn't
as
annoyed at all.
live and breathe,
I was just a little bit, I guess, confused as to why you would think that we don't respond to Prospect Avenue anymore.
well, because we never see them in the block. I mean,
You see Prospect just like you see every other street in Princeton.
if you can find 10 instances of Prospect Avenue being on the blotter in last year, I'll buy the department lunch.
So the question becomes, I think what you're getting at is that we should treat Prospect different than we treat Palmer
No,
Square.
not differently than anyone else, but I'm just surprised. I also don't know how you can be surprised that.
I wasn't
I mean, I
surprised.
just don't.
Well, I
we
can
don't
jump
see-
in here. I think it might be
Surprised at
because
all.
in the borough, we did treat it differently because the police report used to have, I don't think it was on purpose, but it was like an intoxicated person was transported to the hospital and there was a party
Well,
that
there
happened and so
There was a
I
specific report in the borough that just gave alcohol incidents on Prospect, and
oh, there was? Oh.
yeah, and that to me.
So that's why I mean, I understand that now, now that you told me.
Right.
But what happened for me is I thought, oh, we had the MOU and oh, I'm not seeing those
Sure.
reports anymore. Therefore,
Yeah,
the university must be doing that.
the perception that I was annoyed is not correct. It was more of a realization for me that there might have been a misperception. So I just wanted to clarify that and say that, in fact, we respond there as we do to every other, as we always have, as we do to every other street in Princeton.
Mr. Quinn?
Chief, I had a question about, to go back to 14-year-old boys who seem to be mentioned 3 times in the report, specifically in the first one about the aggressor who was lodged at Middlesex County Youth Detention Center. What are the next steps there? Is he being held and charged, or is he When he returns to the community, what sort of,
Sure. So
how is he brought back into the community with what, not only the help that he needs, but also to protect the victim of this assault?
It's very case dependent. So lodging in youth detention facility is not a common occurrence statewide at all. And it only occurs when there's an immediate public safety threat posed by the offender. So in a case like this, the child or the young adult is lodged as a safety issue. And there are a variety of safeguards that are done both for the juvenile and the public by the court. So normally when there's an issue that is not as serious, and it results in charges, a juvenile petition, the juvenile will go to court, there'll be some type of intervention done by the court and some type of action taken, but it's usually very rehabilitative. In these types of cases, the court will take safeguards, whether it's being remanded and held. Bracelets, you may have heard the term bracelets, so the court can monitor whereabouts, and then much more serious type of mental health intervention. Most of the lodging of juveniles that we end up seeing deal with a kind of a combination of all that, a lot of mental health intervention. Usually the juvenile is entered back into the community, but with a lot of restrictions, and that's monitored by the court and probation. So that's kind of what this type of situation is. It's usually not long-term incarceration at all, if that answers your question.
In this specific case, has he re-entered the community, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, Chief. Any other questions for the Chief?
Oh, I have one more question.
Sorry.
It's about the vacant house check. Because I noticed there were a lot of them, and I was wondering, what is that? What do vacant house checks entail?
So it's a service that we provide where homeowners that leave or go away, or property owners that have a private residence or property that's going to be vacant for an extended period of time. You can report that to us. We make a log of it, and our officers will conduct an inspection of the property to make sure it's secure for signs of burglary or something that's a public safety hazard. And we have found different issues over the years with burglaries and other things like that. So it's a service that we offer to residents. You can get the form online.
I was
Well, I
just
knew
going to
what
jump
it
in, Jenny.
is, but I
This is
just
the
wondered
thing
what-
that I've talked a lot about, that you go on and you say, I'm going to be away these dates. And I assumed it meant just that you drove by, but do people actually walk around the house, or?
Our officers will go and make sure the house is physically secured and that the building's not broken into, or in any way there's an issue that the homeowner or key holder has to be notified.
Chief, this is what you've described as a long-standing service. It's been done by the departments in the two former municipalities.
Correct.
And is it uncovered by state statute, or is it a local?
It's a service.
Local courtesy.
It's one of those courtesies that many departments used to do. It's a community-oriented service that we offer to our residents. Some departments, a lot of departments have probably gotten away from it. We see it as we get a lot of requests for it from our residents, and it's one of those services that we provide as a courtesy to our residents.
Thank you. All right, our next